My name is Madison, and I'm currently navigating through the complexities of biology at one of America's top universities. I'm 21, with long, flowing blonde hair that catches the light in a way that's almost distracting. My physique is something I take pride in. I'm fit, with a routine that keeps me in shape, showcasing a toned body that's often the talk among my peers. I'm about 5'7", with a figure that's lean, but with curves in all the right places. My chest isn't overly large, fitting well with my athletic build, and today I've chosen a short, flirty skirt paired with a comfy, form-fitting tights for lounging around the house. My feet, size 8, are finished with a vibrant red polish, adding a pop of color to my look. I live with my stepdad, David, in a lovely home outside of Boston. David has been in my life since I was in middle school, becoming not just a parental figure, but also a friend and mentor, especially in my academic pursuits. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling lab session dissecting the intricacies of cellular biology, I came home to find David in the kitchen, experimenting with a new recipe. "Hey, Madison, how was the lab today?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting. "Exhausting, but fascinating," I replied, setting my backpack down. "We were looking at gene expression in fruit flies. It's like piecing together a puzzle where every piece matters." David smiled, always eager to engage in my scientific ramblings. "Sounds like you're in your element. Want to help me with dinner? We can talk about your day." I joined him in the kitchen, the conversation flowing as naturally as the pasta sauce he was stirring. "You know, I sometimes wish biology was as straightforward as cooking," I mused. "Life's all about the right mix of ingredients," David chuckled, handing me a knife to chop some herbs. "Just like in biology, everything interacts." Our talks were often like this, weaving between my academic life and our personal connection. David had always been supportive, attending my science fairs, helping me study for exams, and celebrating my small victories. Later, in my room, surrounded by textbooks on genetics, microbiology, and evolution, I reflected on how much I've grown since starting college. My room was a testament to my passion, with posters of the human genome, models of DNA, and stacks of research papers. My university experience was intense but rewarding. I was known not only for my looks, but for my intellect, especially in the biology department. My professors often pushed me to explore beyond the textbooks, encouraging research projects that could lead to publication. David and I had a tradition of taking walks in the nearby park on weekends, where we'd discuss everything from my latest findings to philosophical questions about life and science. One Saturday, as we walked, I shared my excitement about an upcoming research opportunity. "There's this project on epigenetics I might get to work on," I said, my voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "That's incredible, Madison," David responded, his pride evident. "You've come so far, and remember, I'm here for any late-night study sessions or just to talk through your ideas." Our walks were not just about physical exercise, but also about mental stimulation. David's questions often made me think deeper about my work, connecting dots I hadn't seen before. Back home, as we settled in for dinner, our conversation turned lighter, discussing plans for the summer, maybe a trip to some national parks where I could observe wildlife in their natural habitats. "You know," I said, looking at David, "you make all of this not just bearable, but exciting. Your support means the world to me." He smiled, his eyes warm. "And your passion for biology inspires me, Madison. Never lose that." This story unfolds much like the complex threads of DNA I study, each chapter revealing more about my journey, both academically and personally, with David playing a crucial role in my development. As the semester moved forward, my biology courses only got more demanding. I was delving into molecular biology, spending long hours in the lab, and even longer hours poring over complex biochemical pathways. One evening, after a particularly long day, I returned home to find David setting up a makeshift lab in our dining room with microscopes and slides. "I thought we could explore some biology together," he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "I picked up some pond water today. Want to see what's living in there?" I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. "That sounds amazing. Let's see what we can discover." We spent the next couple of hours peering into the microscope, identifying paramecia, algae, and even some rotifers. The conversation was a blend of scientific terminology and laughter, bridging the gap between my academic world and our home life. "See this?" David pointed out a paramecium. "It's like a little spaceship of life, navigating through its tiny universe." And here I thought I was the only one who talks about microbes like they're characters in a sci-fi novel. I teased, adjusting the focus. We talked about how these organisms mirrored the complexity of human cells, discussing everything from evolution to the ethics of genetic modification. It was these moments that made me appreciate not just biology, but the journey of learning with someone who cares. As we cleaned up, David looked at me with a proud smile. "You're going to do great things, Madison. I can feel it." "Thanks, David. It means a lot coming from you." I paused, feeling a wave of gratitude. "Sometimes this all seems overwhelming." He stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You've got this. And remember," he leaned in, planting a soft kiss on my forehead. "That's your luck kiss. It's worked for every exam I've ever taken." I laughed, feeling the tension ease. "I'll take all the luck I can get, especially with finals around the corner." The weeks passed, filled with more study sessions, lab experiments, and these special moments with David. Our bond was strengthened by our shared curiosity about the natural world. One evening, while I was buried in notes on DNA replication, David knocked on my door. "Knock, knock. Got time for a break?" he asked, holding 2 cups of tea. "Always for you," I replied, stretching out my stiff back. He handed me a cup, sitting on the edge of my bed. "How are you holding up with all this?" "It's a lot," I admitted, "but I'm learning so much. I've started to see patterns, like how everything in biology is connected." David nodded, listening intently. "That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Every piece of knowledge leads to another. And speaking of connections, have you thought about what you want to do after graduation?" "I've been thinking about a PhD in genetics," I said, a bit of excitement creeping into my voice. "There's so much more to explore. I want to be at the forefront of understanding how genes shape life." "That would be incredible," David responded, his pride evident. "You'd make an amazing researcher. And remember, I'm here for those late-night discussions, or just to help you relax." We talked more about the future, dreams, and the small victories of the present. Each conversation was like a thread, weaving together the tapestry of my life, with David playing a crucial role in its design. As the night deepened, I felt ready to tackle the rest of my studies, fortified not just by the tea, but by the support and the luck kiss from David. This chapter of my story was about more than biology. It was about growth, support, and the joy of sharing one's passion with someone who genuinely cares. The semester was reaching its peak, with finals looming like a storm on the horizon. My days were a blur of lectures, labs, and long nights of study, but amidst the academic chaos, there were moments of calm, mostly thanks to David. One evening, feeling the weight of my workload, I decided to take a break and found David in the garden, tending to his tomatoes. "Need a break from the books?" he asked, noticing my approach. "Desperately," I sighed, pulling up a chair beside him. "How do you make gardening look so peaceful?" David chuckled, wiping his hands on his jeans. "It's all about patience and nurturing, much like studying, I suppose. How's the preparation going?" "It's going," I said, not very convincingly. "There's just so much to cover." He nodded, understanding the unspoken stress. "You'll get through it, Madison. You always do. But remember, it's not just about the grades. It's about learning, growing." We talked more about the parallels between gardening and biology, discussing how both require time, care, and the right conditions to flourish. It was these conversations that often brought me back to why I loved my field so deeply. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the garden, David stood up, stretching. "Let's head inside. I made some soup earlier. It'll be good for you." Back in the kitchen, while he heated the soup, I set the table, feeling the comfort of our routine. Over dinner, our conversation shifted from academics to personal aspirations. "You know, Madison," David began, his tone serious yet warm, "I've seen you grow so much these past years, not just in knowledge, but in who you are as a person. I'm really proud of you." I felt a warmth spread through me, touched by his words. "Thanks, David. It means a lot to hear that from you." He smiled, his eyes reflecting genuine affection. "I love you, Madison, not just as my stepdaughter, but as someone who's become a wonderful friend and confidant." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard, and my eyes misted slightly. "I love you too, David. I'm so glad you're part of my life." He stood up, coming over to where I sat, and gently kissed my cheek. "That's for good luck, but really, it's because I'm so grateful for you." The gesture was simple, but loaded with emotion, reinforcing our bond in a way that words often couldn't. It felt like a seal on our conversation, a reminder of the support I had in him. Later, as I returned to my studies, I felt different. The load didn't seem as heavy, the path clearer. David's words and that kiss on the cheek had given me not just comfort, but a renewed sense of purpose. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Today, David reminded me of why I'm doing all this. It's not just for the grades or the accolades, but for the journey, the learning, and the people who walk with you through it all." This part of my story was about more than academic success. It was about the deep, personal connections that make the journey worthwhile, about love, support, and the quiet moments that fortify us for the challenges ahead. Finals week had arrived, and with it, the culmination of months of hard work, late nights, and endless cups of coffee. The tension was palpable, but so was the excitement. On the last day of exams, after my final biology paper, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. I walked out of the exam hall with a sense of accomplishment, ready to share the moment with David. When I got home, I found him waiting with a celebratory dinner set up. "How did it go?" he asked, his eyes searching mine for the truth. "I think I did well," I said, my voice tinged with the fatigue of the past weeks, but also with pride. I gave it everything I had. David clapped his hands lightly, a broad smile spreading across his face. "That's my girl. Come, sit. Let's celebrate the end of this chapter." We sat down to a feast of all my favorite foods, talking about the exam, what I felt confident about, and what I learned. The conversation was light, filled with laughter, and the kind of relief that only comes after a significant milestone. "You know," David said, pouring me a glass of sparkling cider, "no matter what the results, you've grown so much. This semester was tough, but look at you now." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. It was tough, but I wouldn't have made it without you. You've been my rock." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "And you've been an inspiration. Watching you chase your passion has reminded me of what's important in life." As we cleaned up after dinner, the atmosphere was one of contentment. We moved to the living room, where David had set up a small surprise, a framed picture of us from one of our park walks with a note that read, "To Madison, for all the adventures still to come." I looked at him, touched by the gesture. "David, this is beautiful. Thank you." He stood next to me, looking at the photo. "I wanted you to have something to remind you of our support, our journey together. No matter where life takes you, you'll always have this home, this family." I felt a lump in my throat, emotions swirling. "I couldn't have asked for a better family," I managed to say, turning to him. David smiled, pulling me into a gentle hug, "And I couldn't have asked for a better daughter," he whispered, kissing my cheek in a gesture that felt like a benediction for all that was to come. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the semester, on the growth, the challenges, and the unbreakable bond I shared with David. I wrote in my journal, "This chapter closes not just with an end to exams, but with a deepening of relationships, an understanding of what it means to be supported, loved, and to love in return." This was the end of one story, but as I looked at the picture on my nightstand, I knew it was just the beginning of many more adventures, learnings, and shared moments with David. Our story was one of growth, not just in biology, but in life, love, and the beauty of family chosen by heart, not just by blood.